Let me read to you a passage from the Gospel of St. Luke. It's from chapter 15, verses 1 to 3 and verses 11 to 32. It's the Gospel for the fourth Sunday of Lent. I'll only read part of the Gospel because it's very long. St. Luke writes, "Tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to listen to Jesus, but the Pharisees and the scribes complained, saying, 'This man welcomes sinners and eats with them.' So to them Jesus addressed this parable. A man had 2 sons, and the younger son said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of your estate that should come to me.' So the father divided the property between them. After a few days, the younger son collected all his belongings and set off to a distant country where he squandered his inheritance on a life of dissipation. So he got up and went back to his father. While he was still a long way off, his father caught sight of him and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him and kissed him. His son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son.' But his father ordered his servants, 'Quickly, bring the finest robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Take the fattened calf and slaughter it. Let us then celebrate with a feast, because this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and is found.' Then the celebration began. Now the oldest son had been out in the field, and on his way back, as he neared the house, he heard the sound of music and dancing. He became angry, and he refused to enter the house. And his father came out and pleaded with him. He said to him, 'My son, you are here with me always. Everything I have is yours. But now we must celebrate and rejoice, because your brother was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found.'" Well, that is part of the passage, the Gospel for the fourth Sunday of Lent in Luke chapter 15. What does it suggest to us? Well, the parable which makes up today's Gospel is usually called the parable of the prodigal son. This stands to reason because most of the focus is on the younger, dissolute son who finally returned to his very indulgent father. This focus of the parable reflects that of our Lord in the actual gospel scene. His focus was on the tax collectors and sinners who were all drawing near to listen to Jesus. Moreover, they do not just happen to draw near to him, but, as the scribes and Pharisees complain, Jesus welcomes sinners and eats with them. Our Lord was preoccupied with the tax collectors and the sinners, and he loved to have them come to him and be with him. Hence it is that the focus of the parable is on the sinful and dissolute son who squandered all that his father in his goodness had given to him. But of course, the parable is occasioned by the complaint of the Pharisees and the scribes, not about the tax collectors and the sinners, but about Jesus himself. They complained about his attitude to sinners. He welcomed them and associated with them, the implication being that what he was doing was most unlike the attitude of the all-holy God. Perhaps part of the hostility they felt was due to the fact that our Lord was courting not them, but rather the sinners. Well, we have here at play two very different images of the all-holy God who requires that we seek holiness. Be holy, for I am holy, God says in the Old Testament. The surprise of the New Testament is that God is revealed as a God who seeks out to save those who are lost. He does not simply command and then condemn the blameworthy. He is not simply all-holy in his distant transcendence, near indeed, but altogether beyond. No, he hastens in love to the afflicted. The holiness of God is not the holiness of a master, but rather that of a father. The characteristic image of holiness that we ought have is that of the father in the parable running to his son to embrace him. That is what holiness is like. It involves running in love to embrace the afflicted person. The greatest affliction in the universe is the universal affliction of sin, and it has brought death and mayhem to every nook and cranny of the human condition. God has come running to help us and to take away our sin. He has been like the father in the parable who, while his son was still a long way off, caught sight of him and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him and kissed him. That is the pattern played out in salvation history. God called Abraham, and his plan was that through him all the nations of the earth would be blessed. He revealed himself to Moses and sent him to bring the children of Israel out of slavery to the promised land. He established a unique covenant with his people. As the prophets taught, he was a husband to his people. And finally, he sent his son to take upon his shoulders the burden of the world's sin and to expiate for that sin, and then by his death and resurrection, and then to open the gates of heaven to sinful man. This is the one true God, the God who stands revealed in the person of Jesus Christ, his divine Son made man. All those who wish to be his children, all those who wish to participate in the work that God has done and continues to do, must join with Christ in loving sinful humanity and endeavouring in him to reclaim man from his sin. If we wish to belong to Christ, we too must be found welcoming sinners and eating with them, knowing that we are to be counted among them. What our parable today teaches us is that God is love. The world and its religions may well concur with this, while at the same time failing to realize it. If we say that God is love, a love that is compassionate and merciful, we shall be found conducting a jihad not against those we consider to be tax collectors and sinners, but against our own sinfulness. Our jihad will be against the tendency in ourselves to be like the elder son. Christ is the image of the unseen God, and he who sees him sees the Father. Christ welcoming sinners and eating with them is the paradigm of what God has done for us and of what he wants us to do to others.